This week, the Supreme Court is hearing one of the most controversial cases of this term. Should universities be able to use racial preferences in college admissions? Well, we know somebody inside the courtroom who's heard the arguments and heard the questions from the judges, and he's going to give us now a preview of how he thinks this case may go. Hans, you were inside. What were the most interesting arguments you heard?
Well, the most interesting fight was over the necessity for this program because, as you know, the state legislature in Texas put in what they call the 10% program. That says that kids who perform in the top 10% of their high school anywhere in Texas get into UT. And, the challengers in this case are saying, look, that has brought in a very diverse student body. UT is saying, well, no, it's not quite diverse enough from that, and that was one of the chief points of debate in the arguments today.
This case is back for a second time. This has been here before, went back to the Fifth Circuit, it's back again. At the heart of it, why do you believe it's unconstitutional what the University of Texas is doing?
Look, I think the U.S. Supreme Court made a mistake 12 years ago now in a case out of Michigan in which they said taking race into account can be done under very narrow circumstances if there's no alternative. And the reason this case is back before the court is the Supreme Court sent it down saying that the lower courts had given too much deference to university officials in Texas who were trying to justify this program. It went back down. The Fifth Circuit made the same decision it did before. It's back here because the plaintiffs are saying they did the same thing again.
Not all the judges were here today. Who was missing and why?
Elena Kagan was missing. She was recused from the case because of the fact that, remember, she was Solicitor General of the Obama administration, and they've taken positions in this case. In fact, they filed an amicus brief in the case again, and we're there again arguing today that there's nothing wrong with what the University of Texas is doing.
You said there were a lot of good questions asked, but there were some good questions that went missing. What were those?
I think there were two sets of questions missing. Look, UT keeps saying this is great because it increases diversity, and that's an educational benefit. Well, really? What are the grades of people that are accepted through this program? What are their graduation rates? That information isn't there. If this is such an educational benefit, why isn't that evidence there? The other evidence that wasn't in the case and wasn't asked about today was the fact that we now know, because of an outside investigation done by a big investigative firm, that they had a secret admissions process, a third one, at the University of Texas that they didn't tell anybody about. And there were no questions about that, unfortunately, today.
Are those kind of things that judges will consider when they go back and look at this case again and private after we've now had the oral hearings?
Yes, because that was all stuff that came out in briefs that were filed, including some amicus briefs. So now the court will consider that in making their decision.
And final question, I know we won't know the final ruling until sometime between now and probably June. How would you maybe guess this is going to go?
The three liberal justices, through their questions, made it very clear they think that any kind of racial preference program is okay. So the question really is, how are the four conservative justices and Justice Kennedy, who sometimes goes back and forth, how are they going to rule? I can't predict that.